We will begin with case number 8, forced fatherhood. The debate over abortion rights almost always focuses on women. But what about the men who cause the women to become pregnant? Prospective fathers are frequently absent from these discussions. Because of this, some men feel forced into fatherhood. If a pregnant woman decides that she wants to have the child, then she is able to do so, even if the man does not want the child. In some cases, he is then expected to pay child support. In short, it seems as if women have options, men don't. Women can choose to abort or carry a fetus to term regardless of men's wishes. It only seems fair, and the argument continues, that in the later case, men should not have to pay child support for an unwanted child. Those who argue that men ought to be held responsible for child support, however, point to historical and current gender inequalities that affect income and job opportunities. Furthermore, some women's rights advocates contend that even though the father may be forced to pay child support, he is not obligated to raise the child, a responsibility that falls to the mother and is much more burdensome than paying child support. In this view, paying child support is the least a father can do. If men were no longer forced to pay child support, this would only serve to make gender inequalities even worse. Your question is it ethical for men to be held financially responsible for children they did not want, while women have the ability to get an abortion? Oliver, your 2 minutes for the deliberation starts now. Yeah, apparently. Yeah. I didn't know either. Let's go. One minute remaining. Time is up. Your 5 minutes for presentation starts now. Yeah, go for it, girl. Take that.
I think it is ethical to have men to have to pay child support because they could have they're like responsible for getting the woman pregnant, and the woman is having to go through it's her body, so she's having to carry the child if she's wanting to, and she's having to give birth, and so that's like the least the man can do is like pay child support to like take responsibility for his actions.
Well, that's it. You guys good? Alan N., your 1 minute for deliberation starts now. Time's up. Your 5 minutes to respond starts now.
Our argument is that to counter their statements, the man probably may not be able to afford the child. And while yes, it does take two to make a baby, generally men do not have the same rights as women do when it comes to bearing children. So the father's financial situation and his opinions on the child itself should be taken into account before he is forced to pay child support for a child that he's not even.
Another thing that in this argument that you clarified is that it's the woman's body. But you also have to think about the child's body that's being developed. That if the father cannot obtain the funds needed for the child, that the government can step in. But also in consequentialism, thinking of who it's affected more and how the number of people and the variables being added into that the child will be needing more and more of stability with there's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs of the simple bottom of food, shelter, and that, and then also the care, the love, the care, the love, and the affection that will be later gained by the mother, and having the father with the option to not have to pay for financial stability will affect the child later in life, and having the government step in saying that the father cannot care for you and did not want to care for you will have a greater effect on the child, and also the mother of not having the stability later later in life of being alone in this pregnancy.
Yeah, and also when it's when the men are responsible for getting the woman pregnant, obviously that doesn't necessarily mean they are responsible for the caring of the child, because maybe they can, or maybe they live this decadent lifestyle where it's just moral competence, and you will be bringing the child up in that. But even in financial, if they live in a moral competent life, they won't be able to afford the child, ergo that can be misinterpreted as the men not wanting the child, not wanting to pay for the child, and creating development problems with the child of just lost fathers.
This also relates to the problem of should a mistake be made previously in your life follow you for the rest of your life. And I think that the men, like the women, should have a choice of whether they want to have this become a major part of their lives or if they want to step out early on.
Another thing that you addressed is that men should have the right. It is ethical for, and the man is responsible for getting the woman pregnant, but women can also, there are cases where women make the man get her pregnant for financial aid for the child and for her herself. So in this stance of him, this could be in the sense of rape, that a woman can rape a man. Therefore, if that were to happen and he would still have to pay financial aid for the child that the woman wanted, but not him, this would be unfair to him, causing that it was out of his hands to have this child, and that it was not his fault, and it was not the knowledge of having both people wanting this child. It was her wanting it and putting him into her hands. It was not his choice.
Yes, to sum it all up, there are more examples of this than just an absentee father who doesn't want to deal with the child. There's, like she was saying, forced pregnancy, where the man had no idea that basically the woman would want to have a child, but it happened all the same. It's not just an issue of if, like, they get pregnant on accident. There are many other situations that can be possible.
You guys good? Okay, we still have a minute left. Thank you. Oliver, your 1 minute for deliberation starts now. Your time is up. Your 3 minutes to respond starts now.
Those were some good arguments right there. Probably shouldn't know. There are a lot of exceptions which we believe should go to court, and the judge could decide on how to deal with that situation. And the man should pay the father, the man, the father should pay because they developed a partnership between both the mom and the father, and they have to work together to help this human being that they have to raise. That's what I did.
You stated that the children, like the women, are just having to raise it. The women are still having to pay for like most of the child's needs if they're raising it. The man is just helping the woman cover what it needs.
Yeah, okay. Just checking. We now begin our judges' questions period. Judges, you may ask your questions now.
Yeah, I'll start it out. So one of the points that you acknowledge just in your response to Kellen's commentary is that there may be exceptions to the general idea that the father should pay child support. So my question is mainly clarification. Do you think that one of these exceptions is the actual numerical income that the father has? So for example, should someone who is living below the poverty line, that is the father has an income, say below $20,000 or something like that, is that a factor that should be taken into account in whether or not the person should take child support? Whereas someone who say has making $100,000 a year, very good income, should those people not be able to get off the hook? In other words, do the numbers matter in this kind of situation, and to what extent do they matter?
Okay. I think that they shouldn't be able to get off the hook either way, but the amount of child support could be determined depending on how much income they have. Like if they have a lower income, they wouldn't have to pay as much.
Okay, so they have to pay child support no matter what, but the amount that they have to pay may vary depending on the income they have.
If they can tell that the father who is below the poverty line, as you said, is trying, then they take that into consideration, that he just doesn't want to raise it, but he's helping at whatever way, if you get what I'm saying.
I have a question. So you say that the father should be held responsible because he participated in the action with the mother. Do you think that it would matter if they had had some sort of discussion beforehand? Say, for instance, they had a discussion that neither of them wanted to have children, and so if something did happen, maybe the mother said she would be willing probably to have an abortion. She's not interested in having children at this time, but then afterwards she changed her mind about that, and so the father went into the relationship with a certain perception of what things were going to be like, but then the mother ends up changing her mind when she actually becomes pregnant. Do you think that that would change your view of the father's responsibility?
I think it could. I think they should have the discussion. Like if she changes her mind, they should talk about it first, after she changes her mind. But if they went into it agreeing that they weren't going to have a child and then she changes her mind, I think that could change my view on it.
Okay, my question relates to part of the way the case is described is it says that it seems this case as if women have options that men don't. And my question is, would you dispute that that's the case? Does it only seem that women have more options in the case? Maybe because we might think about gender inequality, so there's other factors at play, so why we might see that the women's options are as limited as the men? Or is it something that you recognize that is the case, that women in fact do have more options in this situation, but that's all right because of your position on responsibility, or how much also does gender inequality play into why you hold your position?
Well, I don't think that really applies to this because the mother is taking care of the baby and it's feeding it, it's doing whatever she can to help it grow and stay alive and to help it become a better human being and everything. The man is doing nothing except, well, to pay the child support. That's that. I guess that's, I don't know if I really explained it.
I think that men have just as many options to, it's not necessarily after they have gotten someone pregnant, they have like things that they can do beforehand. And if they like know that they're not going to want to pay child support, they should get those, like take those measures beforehand.
So, but once it's done, you're okay with the woman having more options?
I would say yes, because the woman has more responsibility when taking care of a baby.
Okay.
So how much time do we have, by the way?
Technically, you guys can go for a little longer if you want
Okay.
to.
So I'll ask another question. So the view you're defending broadly is that I'm curious why you wouldn't be willing to go for a stronger view, which would be the child is not only obligated to pay child support, but in fact just required to raise the child. Just the assumption, of course, of the case is that the mother is obviously in these cases where the father's paying the child support, the mother's doing the one raising the child. But why not just go further and say, look, child support isn't enough, right? You're the kid's biological father. You should raise the child. That should be your responsibility. And that shouldn't be a responsibility that falls exclusively on the mother. So I guess my question would be, why not go in for that kind of view, a stronger position than what you've been defending?
Well, sometimes the father may have different obligations, and if he isn't able to be there, then the best he can do is pay child support.
Okay, so I'll follow up on that. What obligations might excuse a father from caring for his biological son or daughter? What would you include in that idea? These other obligations that get you off the hook, so to speak, for caring for your child.
Well, in case he's having a travel job a lot, he's having to travel a lot, he may not be able to be there. So if he's in, like, say, another country, he can send money rather than, like, that's the best thing that he can do while he's trying to raise money for the family.
I might sort of follow up, thinking about, now that you mentioned, so the father has to travel, that would excuse him from having to raise the child and just have to provide money. So do you think that the same would go for the mother after she's had the child? Would it be okay for
father should have to take care of it, and she could still pay child support to her father.
I guess my final question that I want to ask is, you've insisted that there's a responsibility that the father has, and what I want to ask you is, do you recognize different degrees of responsibility in regards to before, like if they take preventive measures to not have a child? Because you said once it's done, they're responsible, right? Does the narrative before that, does that have any weight on your position at all?
Could you maybe elaborate on the question?
Yeah, good. So what I'm asking is, if the father takes active measures to prevent having a child before a pregnancy, so what you had said earlier that they're responsible after the fact because they could have taken, preventive measures beforehand, that they obviously didn't in this case. If they did, does that in some way alter your view about attributing responsibility to them once there's a pregnancy?
Not really, because if an accident happens, they're still the parents and they have responsibility because it's their genes.
They can't just leave. They have to, take care of it.
I think that if he took the preventative measures, he would still be responsible, but like maybe not as much. Like I was talking with the income, he might not have